Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So today it's going to be news time, and the news is actually really interesting this time. Now, I'm not going to be covering a great deal of patch 6.1 stuff because they're currently pushing a PTR build, but I've got to say the other stuff's really cool. So we've got an apparent leak from Blizzard, which has got a whole bunch of interesting information. A new mount has also been teased, and then a little bit of a talk about Ashran after a recent update, and then one or two other things. So first, let's talk about this new mount. I'll throw up a screenshot of it. First of all, gotta say, it's cute as hell. It's like a void cat thing that you can ride. I think that's extremely cool. But, of course, it was posted on Blizzard's social media, right? It was teased in the Facebook, posted on the Twitter, which probably means that it's a store mount. And you know what? I'm a little bit disappointed about that. I think that a mount that is themed around the Shadow Moon clan void stuff should be a part of the Warlords of Draenor content. I can understand a store mount kind of just being a random tangent that's not really, like, specifically set within the current expansion, or is just sort of kind of tangential, I suppose, but this just, again, feels like a thing that we should have. And I guess a reason why I'm a little bit more harsh in the store mount business is because I don't like the way that things have been going. Back in, I think it was last summer, I released a video that was a bit controversial about the Chimera mount, what's it called, the Iron Sky Reaver? Yeah, that was it. And then the Fey Dragon, because at the time, we didn't really know the we didn't know the Fey Dragon would be a Warlords of Draenor thing. Of course, we knew the Sky Reaver would be, and when the Sky Reaver came out, a lot of people said, hey, this is clearly a Warlords of Draenor thing. Why is it being sold to us outside of the expansion? And with the Fey Dragon, of course, we then found out that Fey Dragons are the racial Draenei flying mount, and there's even a place dedicated to breeding them in Shadow Moon Valley. And while I understand Blizzard want to make their microtransaction money, the amount of store mounts has been increasing quite a bit lately, and I think that some of those mounts actually should have been in-game, especially the ones that are so heavily linked to Warlords of Draenor. Now this cat, or this mount even, I suppose by virtue of being kind of Void Kitty, is a little bit more, you know, a bit more kind of jovial and not completely fitting within the theme of Warlords, so I suppose I can get how they're putting it on the store, but I suppose it's a little bit saddening, this whole thing, and it's probably further fueled by, I suppose, a little bit of disappointment at the Warlords of Draenor mounts. I mean, some of them are really cool. We've got, like, Pound Fist, we've got the Yeti, the Shatari defense one, but grinding mobs. That stuff's cool. But if you look at a lot of the other mounts, they're just kind of reskins of the stable mounts, and one of the things that really, really disappointed me about the stable mounts was that the animations just suck. I mean, I think that boar it looks ridiculous. The Talboks have got a very, very stiff and unnatural animation to them, and then the water beasts just look absurd. And then even some of the wolves, actually, I was very surprised. I was at a friend's house, and he had one of the Warlords of Draenor direwolf mounts, and when it was running around the place, its animation was just way too fast. It looked ridiculous. The wee thing was sprinting based on looking at its legs, but it just looked like the animation was too fast and a bit weird. So I guess with all this stuff going on and just seeing that kind of a lot of the really cool special-ish mounts pop up in the store, it's a little bit disappointing to me, honestly. I suppose I'll probably get a little bit of the old hates down in the comments, because I know a lot of people do seem to be very convicted to defending the Blizzard store. All I'd say is that if something is themed after Warlords of Draenor, then in most cases, I'd say it should be in the expansion, obtainable for players. I think that's a pretty reasonable consumer-first perspective to take. Plus, a lot of the defense for really, really heavy use of store mounts basically was that, well, WoW's got less subscribers now, so surely it, makes sense they're trying to recoup some lost income. Well, you know what? Now they're at 10 million. Do they really need to do that by the logic of the people who say that? I don't really think so. But that's what's going on with the mount. It's really nice. I just hope it's not a store mount. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, let's move on to the apparent Blizzard leak. Now, this is from a guy called Tae Kim, who is a Yahoo Finance contributor. Now, I wasn't 100% sure if that meant that he was an employee, so I checked out his Twitter and did some digging, and he seems to be an industry analyst in the finance industry, and his email address is at a Yahoo domain, so he does appear to be an employee of Yahoo, which I guess means that, like, that's the main reason why I'm talking about this. If this was some random forum post, then of course it would have absolutely no credibility, but Apparently here's someone who, knows their stuff is posting this stuff. And now, of course, this is a leak. It apparently comes from, I just quote from the blog here, an Activision Blizzard insider who could not be named due to the company's policy on talking to the press, and they apparently revealed, quote, significant details about the company's current game pipeline. This basically includes all franchises. Now, first of all, I want to say from a personal perspective that I am actually very skeptical about this. Now, Blizzard did actually respond after he contacted them, so I'll cover their response in a bit because you need to hear what he actually said first. So, this is all conveniently broken down into 6 major points, and the first one is that Hearthstone's next expansion is slated for April, and the game has passed the 75 million player milestone, and apparently they're also experimenting with the 2v2 version, and they seem internally to be very surprised at how massive Hearthstone has become, if this 75 million number is to be expected. Now, recently they did say that they had 20 million players. That was a few months ago, though. And I mean, jumping from 20 to 75 million that's a hell of a jump. It's not out of the realms of possibility, I suppose. But still, yeah, it's a hell of a claim. Now, this idea of a 2v2 version, that does make sense to me. I think that could be pretty fun in Hearthstone if they had a way of making it work. And I think he also mentioned that the expansion is going to be a bit more PvE focused, which would suggest that rather than being something like Goblins and Gnomes, it would be a adventure, so a little bit like Curse of Naxxramas. I think that makes a lot of sense, honestly, and that seems kind of reasonable. Yeah, Hearthstone does appear to have really taken the world by storm, and I guess now that it's coming out in loads and loads of different mobile devices, it's getting quite a bit of market penetration. Anyway, let's hop on from Hearthstone to Overwatch, which is their upcoming first-person shooter, and apparently the insider person said that the business model is still in flux, and they are trying to decide between free-to-play or an expansion-focused model. He said that no matter what, you will initially be able to play the game for free, but how you play for heroes is still to be decided. And apparently the dev team is pushing to launch the game this year, but the senior executives are apparently skeptical that it could be done by that time, and essentially there's a tiny chance for December release, but it's more likely that the game will come out in 2016 at some stage. I think, judging by Blizzard timelines, 2016 is entirely reasonable for Overwatch, though I've got to say it did actually look quite polished from what we saw at BlizzCon, and in terms of the business model, I think some form of free-to-play-ishness would be okay. Honestly, like, it does appear to be a little bit MOBA-ish in terms of the design of its heroes, in that rather than just having like 9 classes, no, in this game you could have 20 or 30 heroes. Now, I think that a good way to do this would be free-to-play model, and then have something akin to Smite's. Smite used to have this thing, right, where you could buy all of the gods in Smite, and I think it cost about £20.99, and you got every god forever. That's what I've got in Smite. And I think that's a very, very good consumer-first business model that doesn't preclude people purchasing additional cosmetic items and things like that. I think overall it's a pretty good way to do free-to-play, and something like that would make sense. Now, of course, another way that they could do this is make it initially free and then sort of sell expansion pack after expansion pack, with each expansion coming with some new heroes and some new maps. They could do it that way, but I definitely warn them against doing an expansion pack-based system with a first-person shooter, because it's very dangerous in terms of you actually fracturing your audience, because if you've got some people who've got all the maps and all the things, well, that's fine for them, but then if you've got some people who don't, then it kind of fractures things. So no matter what, I'd say all maps would have to be available to all players, and I suppose, yeah, it is in flux. It's hard to decide what way to do it with the heroes. But games like that can be reasonably done in a free-to-play model quite well. I think Smite is a very good example. Of course, Dota is the ideal example, but the thing with Dota is that it's backed up by Valve. That said, this game's backed up by Blizzard. It's fucking Blizzard. They can do it. Now, let's move on to the third thing that they talked about, and this actually really was interesting to me. Apparently, the executives have got low expectations for Heroes of the Storm, and the insider thinks that many of the senior staff of the team will be laid off. Well, frankly, I think that last thing is, I don't know if many of the senior staff would be laid off. I think that's a bit ridiculous. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, and you've got a lot of sort of old hats at Blizzard like Dustin Browder there. And as for Heroes of the Storm, well, like initially I wouldn't really have believed what they've said here, but now that I think about it, Heroes of the Storm came out in its technical alpha such a long time ago. and it's not really moved anywhere that fast. That, I guess, is a bit worrying to me. The game has... It's you know, there's the phrase, right? A day late and $1 short. I don't think it's $1 short. It's a good game. I've played it. I've got access. It's really enjoyable. But it's not just a day late. It's not just a month late. The whole... Oh, it's probably years late. I mean, that thing's been in development for so long, since its original inception as a StarCraft 2 map. And, well... Yeah, I'm a bit worried for how Heroes of the Storm will do, not because of how good a game it is. I think it's a very, very, very good game, but more just timing and various things like that. A lot of people are really happy with their Smite, LoL, and Dota, and it's going to take a lot to convince them to move over to Heroes of the Storm. The game's only just came out in its beta, and to get into the beta you have to play. Considering how the other games are just go in there immediately without a Founders Pack, it's, you know, being free. I just think that Blizzard really would need to do something quite revolutionary with the business model to get people in the door for Heroes of the Storm. So, it does worry me a little bit, but it is a fun game, absolutely. Now next, they talked a little bit about StarCraft 2, and apparently the next StarCraft 2 game is already done and ready to go, and the release date is still not settled though, and apparently the current time window ranges from April to June. Well, I don't think April will happen because it's the end of January. Usually we would have heard something. But I think, yeah, April to June could make sense, because it's been a while, a good while, since Heart of the Swarm even has came out. I think the esports scene is maybe sort of got a bit stagnant, right? And yeah, it's about that sort of 2-year schedule, time frame, whatever, where I think StarCraft 2 really, really does desperately need an expansion to make it interesting. And of course, Legacy of the Void is actually doing quite a bit more than the past expansions. It's got the Archon mode and a lot more things that I think will be appealing to the more casual player who doesn't want to just sit there in the ranked queue. So I'd say April to June makes a lot of sense in my head, though if that was the case, we would probably hear something about it kind of soon. Now, the fifth thing that they said was that apparently the World of Warcraft team has quadrupled its art outsourcing, which has been a bit of a bottleneck in the past, and the next expansion is almost feature complete. Well, that's quite the claim. So this idea of outsourcing the Blizzard art, I suppose that makes a lot of sense. You can outsource some of the grunt work to other people. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing for quality, but I mean, so far the quality of the art in the game has kept on getting better, so hopefully it's still good, I suppose. Now, as for this idea of the next expansion being feature complete, I think that probably makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, in terms of just like the raw features that are put in place from a technical end, I think a lot of them probably would be done by now, and that just makes a lot of sense to me, I suppose. They, right now, are developing multiple patches and developing, of course, the next expansion all simultaneously. They doubled the size of the team during Mists of Pandaria, which meant that they are just doing more simultaneous work in an effort to keep the flow of content a little bit more smooth. So maybe that's what's going on there. I think actually that change in development to be even more focused on working on future patches and future expansions and stuff, I think that actually has been a little bit to the detriment of the start of Warlords of Draenor, because, well, some people think it's been a little bit slow, but I suppose we will probably within the next few patches start to see the benefits of that. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense actually. I think right now and for the next expansion they're probably just going to try to, you know, polish things up, get the art in, maybe work on some of its patches. I'd imagine that by the next expansion is almost feature complete, that, you know, they mean 7.0 is almost feature complete. Yeah, bizarre, isn't it? So we'll have to see how that pans out. If they were planning on Warlords of Draenor being a year-long expansion, which Tom Chilton did allude to in Gamescom in Germany before WoD came out, well, if that is the case, then yeah, the next expansion would probably have to be feature complete at this stage. So let's move on to the sixth and final thing, which is a little bit about the Diablo 3 team. Apparently, according to the Insider anyway, they've moved on to a new project that's set in the StarCraft universe that's similar to Warframe and contains gameplay aspects from Left 4 Dead, DayZ, Smite, or other MOBAs, and apparently it's in early pre-production. Though Blizzard then responded saying that the Diablo 3 team is working on future Diablo 3 content and not any other unannounced project. So make of that what you will. I thought this overall thing was, I suppose, worth talking about because it's going to make the rounds of the news. It's from a decently reputable person from at least what I could check. And of course, it's always a lot of fun to just speculate and talk about future stuff, so that's kind of why I included it. Anyway, let's move on to the rest of the news. So the saga of Ashran continues, and they've changed it so that after a boss is killed, the center lane of Ashran will reset for 30 minutes. And the reason why they've done that is because they want to encourage the winning team to then just kind of like disappear off to the various side objectives and things like that to have some more little skirmishes. And I think the main reason why they did that, or at least what they said, is that apparently there was win trading going on with Ashran. Now, look, I just thought it was worth mentioning here because it's just kind of fun to bring up Ashran, and it's something that, of course, does affect the PvP community quite a lot. It doesn't affect me because I don't really engage in it. I don't find it to be that enjoyable for the reasons that I've said many times, and I don't think there's really any point in me repeating them here. But yeah, it does seem like Ashran's just having a bit of a floundering problem. Now, I did look at comment sections and the World of Warcraft Reddit and a few other things, and it didn't look like a lot of the responses to this change were that positive. But of course, there is generally a negative bias when it comes to comment sections, so it's really hard to take anything from that. Still, I think a part of this does make a bit of sense. I get what they at least mean. They want to encourage people to run around the place, but I would say that if they have to control, like if they've made this game system where they have to control players by just putting in hard limitations and things like this, and just sort of, you know, blasting them in hotfixes, I think that just says a lot about the maybe flawed nature of the initial design. I think Ashran could have been done a lot better, and I just think this constant need for tweaking clear problems is, it's indicative, I suppose. Anyway, look, I don't want to cover this too much, and I suppose a lot of this episode has been kind of either rumor and speculation or a bit of a negative sort of vibe. Sorry about that, it's not really my goal or anything like that. It's just how the news has kind of spun out today, but I am going to end it on a very bright note, actually. And they are implementing some stuff in patch 6.1 that is going to make cosmetic effects better apply to shapeshifted forms. That includes things like, say, a shaman's ghost wolf, or maybe a feral cat druid. And they posted a pretty cool little photo of a druid who was basically just wearing those, you know, those fire wing things that come from the Darkmoon Fair. Yeah, them. Really nice that that's happening. I think it's actually something that really did get to a lot of people, you know, shapeshift forms, remove cosmetic effects, various things like that. So it's nice that that's being fixed up. I'm actually really interested to see how things pan out in the future expansions with shapeshifted forms, though. I do remember a blog post about additional cosmetic items like vials for rogues, like holy book things that paladins could carry around, and quivers for hunters. That was really, really awesome, and they did say it was going to be in a future expansion. Perhaps there could be some way of maybe customizing your moonkin, or your feral cat, or your bear, or something like that. I think it would be kind of nice to allow those players a little bit more of a personal, just a way to customize their character, because I suppose for a lot of us, we get all this gear and it's very clear how powerful we are, but when you're in cat form, well, you're a cat, right? It doesn't really show your progression that much visually, so that's, well, I suppose a random little point I just thought I'd throw in there. Nice to see them have a look at this stuff, and that's really it for today's news. Now, as I said at the start, there is some stuff going on with the patch 6.1 PTR, and I will be sure to bring that, whatever that is, to you as soon as I can get on. Anyway, that's it for today's video, and let me know what you thought about the various things discussed today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.